Members, can I remind you that this meeting will be recorded and ask you to note that mobile phones should be switched off as they interfere with the recording. Tablet devices should be switched to mute. Can I remind members to declare their interest as appropriate throughout the meeting? Can I declare the meeting open to the public? And agenda 1, have we apologies? Tom Elliott? That's the only apology we have. Agenda item 2. Chairperson's business. Can I advise members that under the agenda item on the Forward Work Programme we will have to consider a number of visit requests. Given that we are about to embark on an inquiry on the approach of summer recess, I'd ask members to give the request a full consideration and bear in mind the commitment required to attend visits, but we will discuss this in detail later in the meeting. Can I advise members that the committee now has its Twitter account activated and as agreed at last week's committee. Staff will put up short, factual messages about the work of the committee. Agenda item 3, minutes of the meeting of the 12th of May 2015. Can I refer members to the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of May 2015 at pages 6 to 11? Are members content that the draft minutes are accurate?
Great.
Okay, so I will sign. Okay. Agenda item 4, matters arising. Can I refer members to matters arising at pages 14 to 23? Members content to action matters arising as suggested on the index sheet at page 13. Okay, member?
Great.
We now, agenda item 5, have an oral briefing from NSA EU lamb labelling issues. Can I refer members to the correspondence from the Minister in reply to the committee on the labelling issue at pages 26 and 27, and the press release from the Minister on the same issue at page 28. Can I welcome John Blaney, Northern Ireland Regional Chairman, Campbell Tweed, Vice Chairman, and Brian Jamieson. You're all very welcome, and we'd ask you to give us up to 10 minutes to make your presentation, and then we'll ask some questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Can I thank you for giving us the opportunity to make this presentation, and our Vice Chairman Campbell Tweed is going to make the presentation.
Thank you. A bit of background to begin with. Up until 2001, lamb and sheep in the country were all island. There was no impediment at all to trade north and south. After foot and mouth, then the border became an international border, and then we have international trade rules to deal with. So that was the first hiccup that we've had. And going back really into the history, around about 44% of our lamb would be slaughtered in the south, and have been for a long time. There's not enough current capacity in the north to slaughter all our lamb. Lamb trade in general has been quite good over the last couple of years. It is, along with poultry, the most widely traded and most widely acceptable meat. It doesn't run into the same constraints with religious and cultural differences that pork and beef can. So it's very important for us as lamb producers that our lamb can get to the market with as little hindrance as possible. Currently, a lot of lamb would be slaughtered in the Republic of Ireland. More cull sheep would tend to go to GB and would go into what would be loosely termed ethnic markets over there, particularly. Already in the industry, because of strong sterling and weaker euro, we've seen a bit of a fall in price, and this labelling issue, which has blown up at a difficult time, has just added to that sort of uncertainty and weakness in the market. The market came down quite dramatically over time, and Brian Jamieson has a few figures on that front. The reality is that we need a competitive market to really set a price so that we get a good price No processor is going to say, I need to pay more for it, unless his competitor's prepared to pay more and really put a bit of vigour into it. Historically, we would have been normally ahead in price of our southern counterparts, but a wee bit behind our GB people. The GB margin has widened, and it's running between 50 and 70 pence a kilogram over the last while, which is just too wide. For a couple of weeks now, we've been a bit weaker than the south, which just doesn't normally happen. We would be the kind of top up for their plants rather than the other way around. Unlike Northern Ireland, the Republic has several plants that are totally dedicated lamb plants. They just are a lamb line. There's not all the factories in this country are dual species. They're both beef and lamb, so they can switch from one to the other. But the dedicated plants in the south are entirely lamb, and for that point of view, maybe tended to take it a bit more seriously in the past. So that's and the other important point from where lamb has been over the last while is that in terms of a product off grass, it would be second in profitability in general to dairying. That might be slightly different at the minute, but over the longer term, dairying would generally be in pole position, and sheep production, lamb, would be second, and beef would be somewhere behind that. So that's a summary of the background.
Okay, yeah, if I just carry on, please, if I may. There's been a lot of debate around the weakness of the euro regarding the price differential, and yes, certainly it's down 13% on last year's figures, or thereabouts. But if we go back to 5th of May 2014, LMC quote was up to £5 per kilo for 21 kilo lamb, which was leaving it at £105 per head. Even allowing for that 13% reduction in euro, that should still leave your lamb around £93, which is currently about £13–14 above where it's at presently. So the euro certainly has a factor, but the fact this mixed origin, the confusion around the labels is certainly not helping the issue. And regarding the labelling, in December 2013, a report on mandatory origin labelling was adopted by the Commission. The need for consumers to be informed, the feasibility of mandatory labelling and the cost-benefit analysis were assessed. It found that consumer interest in origin labelling is not reflected in their willingness to pay the additional cost incurred in providing that information. Indeed, at price increases of less than 10%, the consumer willingness to pay falls by 60 to 80%. And introducing labelling would necessarily increase operating costs for businesses by up to 50%. Due to more detailed information and full traceability being required. An interesting figure which I received this morning, albeit based on 2014 figures from the Econs and Stats, which is the department's financial guidebook. The Econs Stats figure is just a gross margin figure. There's no fixed cost, but adding on the fixed costs in relation to benchmarking figures, it leaves the price of production of a lamb at £4.60, which is a long way short of where we're at today. So, as you can see, there's still a lot of work to be done in that regard. My fear is that the labelling issue is just Eurocrats gold-plating the issue of labelling and wake of the horse meat scandal. What I'd like to know is just how big an issue is it really in mainland Europe, and if so, can we not follow their lead? Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for your presentation. Certainly, I've had a number of representations from farmers and livestock mart owners with concerns in regard to this. 50 to 70p per kilo less than the current UK price. How much is that in real terms per lamb, approximately?
Well, it'll be sort of £10 to £15. Probably just about what it would cost to ship live.
So it's, yeah, okay. We have been receiving representation, and we've been told that the labelling is the big issue here. We have a letter from the Minister states that I understand that the majority of the drop in exports to the south occurred prior to the introduction of the new legislation. Is that right or not wrong? That's the Minister responding to us.
The drop in volume might have occurred before the introduction of the labelling, but the drop in price certainly happened after. I mean, it's one of these things where there's still a significant amount of misinformation about.
Yeah.
Very hard to pin exactly
what's fact and what's fiction.
What's happening, where and why.
It would appear that, you know, in early April, lamb prices, either hoggets or spring lambs, the price fell by £20 per head to the farmer.
Yeah.
And I don't think it fell at all to the consumer.
Yeah, okay.
Do you want in first?
Price fell here by £20 a head. So this, we are told that it's all about the labelling, and labelling is a factor, but there's a number of factors. Looks like it's coming into play: the labelling, the exchange rate. So it's, as you say, it is quite difficult to ascertain where the real impact is coming from, and you feel it's a combination of both, probably, yeah?
Well, I think it is. I think the labelling has been a convenient excuse. I also get the impression now, rightly or wrongly, that the southern factories are a bit keener on lamb. I mean, we've seen the price come up in 2 successive weeks now. We're still not back up to really where we should be, but at least we're in a better position than we were.
Yeah, I had been in contact with a factory owner who told me we need Northern Ireland lambs. So, you know, if they're importing 44% of the lambs from here, they obviously need them. So he did feel, as a few weeks ago now, he did feel that it would level itself out again. Whether or not that will happen remains to be seen also, you know. Joanne, Joe first.
Chairman, thanks, because I have to go for a question.
Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, I think, Campbell, you made the point that it's hard to find out exactly what's going on here. But obviously, 44% of our sheep are normally slaughtered in the Republic. It begs the question, what was the market then used for selling the final product? Was it the French market, or where was it? And what about those markets that those plants in the south would normally have? Are they constrained, or are they less than what they were, or what's going on?
Well, we don't think there's so much constraint at the market end. There certainly is a bit of constraint in process, in that with the labelling issue, they have to treat lambs in batches, both in the abattoir and then again in the cutting room. So that certainly complicates things for the operator, and there is some cost associated with that. As far as we can make out, the end customers are perfectly happy with the lamb, and they're not particularly bothered whether it's ROI or Northern Ireland or whatever. But it's the complication in the process that seems to be the biggest issue. But then, it wouldn't be the first time that a processor was happy to hide behind something.
Secondly, Shannon, that begs the question of if they have their normal end market user, they still have to get the sheep into the slaughtering houses to have the volume. Is it that it's the normal man in the market that isn't coming here, or are they working on cahoots with each other to sort of have a restricted practice?
As far as I know, the buyers were given very limited instructions. You know, they had the bad weeks, they just didn't want any. They were told that they weren't to buy, or only to buy at a very reduced price.
They're told to hold back.
Yes.
But does that constitute restricted practice?
Good job for yourself.
Thanks, General.
Okay. Joanne, stand up.
Thanks, Chair. Can I thank you for your briefing? And it's certainly an issue which is having a serious impact in the industry, and certainly we heard so much about it at the Balmoral show last week. The Minister has indicated that she sees voluntary labelling as a solution. I would like to hear your take on that, because surely by its very nature a voluntary system could not provide a total solution for your members. What's your...
Well, the problem we have is that compulsory can only say one thing for each party. You know, you can't put another sort of cover on it in the compulsory fashion. It's either born in Northern Ireland and processed in the South, or it's born in the Republic and processed in the Republic. I mean, that's the way it is. The voluntary would be of a name, but it's of the island of Ireland or whatever, you know, that makes it look at it more from the All Island perspective. You couldn't do that in any kind of compulsory way, because there isn't a category for it, because in European terms everything's according to a member state. And well, there doesn't seem any eminent
The very
prospect.
nature of it would
Yeah.
not provide a solution.
Yeah, so I think part of the reason for the voluntary effort is to try and find a way of moving the whole thing forward and moving the processor's mind on to the end market and the marketing end of it, rather than the hurdles in between.
I note in her response to the Chair, the Minister refers to a significant drop in demand for meat plants in the Republic of Ireland, and you have highlighted that and outlined that for the live exports of lambs from Northern Ireland. Can you give us an assessment on the impact this is having on your members?
Well, guys, particularly fellas who are supplying early season lamb, basically the Easter trading shortly after it, that is the most expensive time of the year to produce lamb. They are meeting the highest cost, and they've had a very significant financial hit. I mean, they're looking at least a 20% discount in what they expected for receiving for the lamb. We can be absolutely certain they get no discount whatsoever on the costs side, and it's very discouraging. And the secondary aspect to that is that ideally our lamb will be produced over a long season, so it is available for plants and for customers over a long time. And if early season lamb isn't profitable, people will stop producing it.
Yeah.
In addition to what Campbell has just said, for those who have had difficulty getting rid of their hoggets at the beginning of April, that will affect the live trade market in the autumn again. For those who are lamb finishers, winter lamb finishers, are not going to speculate the same if they cannot be sure of a market at the end of March, April.
So it is going to have a massive, massive impact.
It could have a very big impact.
Oh, okay. And finally, in our press release, the Minister said that the new EU labelling rules appear, in other words, to have adversely affected farmers in Northern Ireland. From your presentation and everything that you have outlined today, could the word appear easily be removed, and would that help ease the pressure on your members? What would you like to see happen going forward?
Well, we would like to see the market return to normal as soon as possible. I mean, I don't think there's anything to be gained by debating one or two words. You know, it's the impact on the market, and hopefully the market is recovering. And I would like to think that in maybe 6 weeks or a couple of months' time, we can look back at this and see that it wasn't as bad as it looked at the time. Although,
But at the minute,
conversely, we could be looking back at it and saying, "Oh no, we didn't know that was ahead of us. That's terrible."
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Alderman McMullen.
Thank you for your presentation. I do agree with you. It's not the time for looking over a couple of words. It's time for looking for some sort of a solution here. Yes, one of the points I was going to bring up is the winter trade there. And not going to go into the lamb fattening at all, I guess. I spoke recently to two buyers on this here, and I got their opinion on it, and they think the only thing is that it's got to be complete joining up together between north and south on this, and get something done with this voluntary label. Try and get the lambs back into the market again. I think I spoke to you, John, about that. The Minister has been talking to different officials, and she has her officials out talking to people, Standards Agency, and has been talking to Simon Coveney. But we need to be doing something ourselves here, because when we talk about the foot and mouth, when that ban came on, we all got together to get in line. So, what would you like this committee to do today? And I know you have a presentation today, but have you anything in specific mind that we can do to help at the present time on your behalf?
Well, I think there's probably two things. The first one is just fully support the Department Minister to make sure that everything that's done to help things along the way is done. The second issue is that if we had a bit more processing capacity in the north, we could put a wee bit more competition in the market. The northern kill of lamb has increased a bit over the last couple of years, and that has been to our benefit. Now, we wouldn't want to see northern processors having a complete monopoly, because we know what would happen then, but a bit more competition in the market would be good.
So, well, I would suggest that, Chairman, that this committee here tries to arrange an immediate meeting with the Agricultural Committee as well, and also to write to Minister Coveney of the concerns we have on behalf of the trade. I think we need to be doing, these are some of the things we need to be doing to raise the profile, because we need to make sure that the Minister in the South is in favour, complete favour of voluntary labelling, and trying to get the thing worked out. And I do think that if a meeting of our own committee here with the relevant committee in the Dáil could add strength to that argument. That's, I propose we do that, write the letter, and also ask for the meeting.
Okay. We have a meeting arranged for September with the Southern Committee, but we can write to the committee in the Republic of Ireland at this stage and get their views on that. That's
Chairman, September is a long way off, and you know we need to be doing this now.
well, we would hope that your minister, the minister, is currently doing that.
Chairman,
and meeting with.
over there, look this way. The Minister is doing things, but what I'm saying is that we, as a committee, need to be doing something. You know, we can't be just writing letters. We need to be doing something more proactive, and we have an opportunity here for doing it.
Sorry, there is possibly a third thing. In the Going for Growth strategy, lamb doesn't get much of a mention in it. A lot of other products do, and I think lamb has more to offer than it gets a mention in the Going for Growth strategy, both in terms of the value of the product and also work that could be done to insist the efficiency and the quality of the production.
Okay. You do say that prices have steadied or firmed slightly this last couple of weeks. Do you see that continuing, or not so sure?
Who knows?
I understand it's very difficult.
Crystal ball.
They have stabled by how much, actually?
Well, they've come up, what, 30 pence anyway. You know, not quite 10%. They came up almost 10%, but not quite.
I suppose traditionally, you know, in a month's time, the lambs, the bulk of lambs will start to appear on the markets, you know.
Spring lambs, yeah.
Yeah, the March corn lamb will be 3 months, hence, you know, hence from March it'll be appearing. But just on the issue of labelling, the General Secretary of Copa Cogeca was speaking to the Farmers Union recently, and he was asked about this concern. Now, to be honest, his answer wasn't very encouraging, to say the least. He quoted an example where there was a great trade between Italy and France for beef heifers, and labelling became a concern, and it hit the trade completely on the head. It wiped it out. So it didn't say it was insurmountable by any means, but he said it, you know, it could be a long road, according to him. So it's something that's just, you know, it mightn't just be a
Easy fix.
flash in the pan.
Yeah.
No.
Could be long term.
Yeah.
Okay. Edmund? Or Sydney? Was Sydney's first? Sydney? Sydney.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, gentlemen. Apologies for being late for the beginning of your presentation. I've listened there with regards to labelling, and one of the factors as well was exchange rate. If labelling was in some way sorted, how much a factor is the exchange rate? What effect is the exchange rate really having on the sector?
Well, just a quote there. The exchange rate is based on last year's figures compared to this year's figures, down about 13% on the strength of euro, which for a lamb, 5th of May 2014, a 21 kilo lamb was making £105, £5 a kilo. I'll even line for that week in euro. You're talking that same lamb today should be worth £93. You know, allowing for the weakness in the euro, which is not, as you're hovering at around £80 for a reasonable lamb.
So really, it plays a big factor here. The exchange rate is having that big effect on the.
Certainly, it's bringing it down, the price of lamb down maybe by £12 on last year's figure, but then there's still that drop of another £12, you know, again. So you're talking really almost a good 20, 22, 23% of a drop, realistically, between euro and over the labelling.
If the labelling was sorted out and the euro was to remain where it is today, it would still be pretty devastating to the sector with
yes,
that exchange rate.
Yeah.
I'm trying to focus in on the fact is this exchange rate at the present time probably is having quite a big effect here. Irrespective of labelling.
Yeah, well, it's as weak as since, you know, April 2007, or you know, so it's it certainly has a big impact. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. But you know, there's unfortunately, it's just maybe the perfect storm.
And you touched on there maybe of having bringing more capacity into the market. Would that in any way help to balance it out if there was some more capacity here?
I think it would to some extent. It would certainly take the labelling issue out of the lamb slaughtered in the north. But to go back slightly to what you were saying, talking to Brian there, I think that the labelling thing has more or less doubled the difference that the currency was making. You know, it's just made it, because the currency wasn't that big an issue through January, February, March, and trade was quite strong. The labelling came up, and then currency seemed to become more of an issue as well.
Compounded by the fact of the labelling. Okay, just to clarify that. Okay, sure, thank you.
Any other members?
Yep.
Yeah, Edwin.
Thanks so much, Chair. It's just getting back to. Well, Mr. Mullen asked the question what could be done, and then he'll often go tangent about something else. But in terms of what can be done, you did refer to more slaughter at a local level, because that does away with the issue about labelling. Like, I had to be honest, it's going to be very difficult to deal with the labelling issue. You know, it's been brought in by the European Union, and it's not going to be lightly changed. So I don't think that'll be a quick fix. It'll take considerable work if you want to get it changed, and to get it changed properly. You also indicated about going for growth, and I would say the issue about more local slaughter and going for growth together. I know that some of our local companies have very large lamb slaughtering plants, both in other parts of the Kingdom and indeed in the Republic of Ireland. And I'm just wondering, what is the problem, what is the issue that we don't have more lamb slaughtering here in Northern Ireland? What can be done to actually ensure that is the case? And the Matic thing seemed to be driven last year, and was largely driven by the supermarkets. I'm not so sure that is really the underlying problem with this particular issue, and indeed whether a lot of lambs end up in France, whether that's as big an issue for those folk as it would have been for the English supermarket last year.
I think the biggest single difference between our processing, our lamb plants, or our lamb lines here and elsewhere is that we're dual species here that can change between lamb and cattle.
Yeah.
Whereas a dedicated lamb plant, as some processors have in Wales, for example, and as other processors have in the south, if you're a single species plant, it concentrates their mind considerably. Whereas in the dual species thing, they can flip back and forward, not say just according to the notion moving them, but something close to that at times.
Yeah.
So there's just less, well, slightly less seriousness about it, I think, from that perspective.
And if the live trade has always sustained the
live trade's always been an
lamb
essential.
sales, there's never been enough capacity in Northern Ireland to absorb the lambs.
And ironically, the position's very poor in Scotland as well. An awful lot of their lambs are slaughtered in the Midlands of England and Wales.
And have they been hit with that as well, the labelling?
We're not aware of
They
it.
shouldn't be.
No, we're not aware of it, but then they're not going to another member state.
No.
Born in the UK, slaughtered in the UK.
So, and
That's the problem.
ironically, all the English and Scottish lambs that are going to Wales help fund the Welsh promotion because the levy's taken off the lambs at the slaughter point. So it's quite it's an interesting aside.
I think there's 1 million lambs go out of Scotland to be killed in England and Wales.
Per year?
Yeah.
Okay. All right then.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
You've had discussions with the department on this issue, have you? No? Yeah.
Yes, we've had informal discussions with them. They're well enough aware of the issues.
Okay. And there was no, you got no, were you any happier after having those discussions, or still more concerned? I mean, were they able to shed much light on this?
Well, I mean, the department are doing their best.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. And they're, well, in support of both the industry and the minister. So, I mean, we can't ask for a lot more than that.
Okay. Okay. So it's essentially a perfect storm, and
We hope
the labelling is added to that.
Yeah. We hope it blows by.
Okay. There's no other members. Thank you very much for your presentation, and the committee will decide what action we take there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate taking the time and inviting us to give evidence, and any other sheep issues we're happy to come back on whatever occasion it suits.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sorry, do you want
No, I
to?
just wanted to follow on from
Sorry.
Oliver had proposed earlier on, so that we do write to the department in the south and maybe ask for an immediate meeting rather than waiting until September. You know, this is something that needs to be dealt with in the here and now rather than months down the road.
Yeah, we can discuss. We have a number of meetings to discuss later on in the meeting, so we'll do that. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Members feel there's any action other than we should take at this stage, or anyone to leave it later in the meeting?
Well, I'm quite happy to discuss the issue now.
Yeah.
And now is the time to discuss it. I think just for the benefit of the committee, it needs to be made clear that it's wholly inappropriate to start making proposals in the middle of a session with visitors here.
Yeah.
We'll deal with the visitors, we'll go through the business with the visitors, and subsequent to that, the committee makes decisions, and people jumping the gun and doing that sort of thing looks totally unprofessional, and doesn't bring any credit to the committee whatsoever.
Right, Chair, can I just say it's not the first time that you yourself has brought a proposal in front of those who are making presentations. So the whole of now attitude of that there, you're completely out of order.
Totally unprofessional. Totally unprofessional.
And
Just
you-
started a debate like that whenever people
You
were giving
hope
evidence to
you
the
hope you
committee.
include yourself in the same light.
Now is an appropriate time to discuss it, and I'm happy to
Yeah.
discuss it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll go back.
Sorry, can I just say something as well?
We'll
A
maybe
comment
come
made
back
to
in
you,
some of
Chair,
yours.
which is totally inappropriate.
Some
Relation to where you were looking at.
some of your own proposals when the presentations were being made there, you've done that several times.
In terms of order, do you want to just...
Listen, no, I feel we should maybe be doing something. I mean, writing to the committee down south. I think we have a meeting arranged for September. The minister's meeting with the minister down there on a number of occasions on this issue, and we accept that they're doing all they can on this issue. It is a difficult issue. It's as Adam's already said, this is EU has imposed the labelling. There's no quick fix or no easy fix to it.
Sir, regardless of the rights and wrongs of when the proposal was made, right, I'd be more interested there in supporting, what we can do.
That's right.
To make better prices there, for the sheep industry.
Absolutely.
So if we're going to be meeting in the south in September, why not try and fast forward that, to the here and now, and see if there's anything that can be, can come out of that, to support sheep farmers.
I think there certainly needs to be a discussion with the folks in the south, because we have other issues around eggs, etc. Where we're seeing blatant discrimination against producers in Northern Ireland by the south, who are going out of their way to make it difficult for Northern Ireland produce to end up on the shelves of shops.
These are parts of the discussions. It has to be,
Perfectly happy to have those discussions, and I think we probably need to be framing the discussion and framing the debate as to how we go about that. In terms of the issue about labelling, because we have the pneumatic issue coming up here, the cattle that were bought, store cattle that were bought and finished here, and then with the issues of the lambs that are going south. So those are two fairly critical issues when it comes to labelling. What's Commissioner Hogan's thoughts on it? Can they make amendments to it that will provide some flexibilities that would be of assistance to us? And our counterpart committee will have less influence over the decision. The key people here is our own minister, Simon Coveney, and indeed Commissioner Hogan and his team. And that's where the message needs to go through.
I think if we remember in the nomad cattle issue, there was an agreement that the thought would work, and I think the retailers wouldn't accept that, and that's the difficulty too. Everyone thought that was resolved, and ended up it wasn't resolved.
That's something we all agree on, because nomadic cattle yesterday, sheep today, what's it going to be tomorrow? And that's the facts facing us. And as you heard today, the presentation, it's what's going to come out later on for those men, the milkmen, etc., who buy for winter, for the sheep for the winter, the fatten. That market will not be there unless we try and do something now. And we've got to move now on it and try and get an agreement on voluntary labelling now, because at the present time there seems to be no other solution coming from Europe. And I think that's what the presentation was made very clear today.
It actually wasn't as clear as I'd like it to be like.
No, but I think
Because, I mean, they made it clear that there was no one thing that was causing this problem. There was a number of perfect storms.
But their biggest hope at the minute is the voluntary label. If we can get that there, that may help, So I think we need to be acting on it now rather than waiting.
Okay, members, I'm in your hands. I don't. We can write to the committee. And
Commissioner Coe, to Commissioner Hogan.
maybe the best option. At the end of the day, they're the ones that impose these labels.
I think you get the correspondence out there, see what the comeback is on the correspondence, because that's the immediate action, so it is.
Yeah.
Follow it through then.
Okay.
Chairman, go back to mine. I still think we should maybe try and for a meeting with the Yard Committee or the relevant Agricultural Committee in the Dáil to see what they're taking on and what they're doing to push this on as well.
Well, we'll get that from a letter, and
Yeah.
if we need to follow it up.
And we have a meeting already arranged, yeah,
That's provided on that.
We have a meeting arranged,
for September, yeah.
so we're clinging on to September.
No, we're not. We're writing to them now.
For me now, and we're going to wait till September.
We're going to write to them.
So it saves us.
Okay. Is everyone happy to write to the committee or counterparts down south? Okay.
Can we take a vote on that? I've proposed and was seconded, Chair, that we go for a meeting with the Agriculture Committee in the Dáil.
Okay.
Well, I propose, Chair, an amendment that we write to the Commissioner Hogan, to our own Minister, to the Minister in the Irish Republic, to the Committee in the Irish Republic, and indeed to the DEFRA Minister relating to this issue, and that we make a decision on how we follow that up. There could be meetings and meetings before September, but we make a decision how we follow that up afterwards. That corresponds back.
For seconds or something?
Second.
Yeah. So we have 2 proposals, 2 seconds. Do we put the second proposal, I think, before the committee first night? It's normal practice, isn't that right?
It usually goes first, doesn't it?
The ball's is long anyway. Okay. Members that agree with Edwin Pooch's proposal that we write to our counterparts.
Okay, that's 4. I've got these here.
Members that agree with the proposal that we try to get a meeting with our counterparts as soon as possible. 3. Okay. So, Mr. Pooch's proposal is carried. Okay. Agenda item 6. We have an oral briefing from Dara on rural proofing bill. On the rural proofing bill, can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 30 to 34 and papers from the department at pages 35 to 75? Can I welcome Louise Ward Hunter, Grade 3 Deputy Secretary, Colette McMaster, Grade 5 Assistant Secretary, and Oswald Stewart, Grade 7 Principal Officer. Can welcome you along to our meeting and ask you to take up 10 minutes for your presentation, and then we'll ask some questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman, to you and indeed the committee members for the chance to provide a briefing on the response to the public consultation on the policy proposals for rural briefing. You already, Chair, have introduced Colette and Astrid, who are here. I hope to flesh out on any questions that the committee members might have, any detail that you'd like to explore with us. Going back to the beginning, members are aware of the Minister's intention, subject to executive approval, to progress a rural proofing bill through its assembly stages during this current mandate. And when we came before you earlier in the year, on the 20th of January, I outlined then the need for the proposed bill, the discussions that we'd had up until that point with stakeholders, and the bill's policy proposals. And I also referred to the intended public consultation exercise on those draft policy proposals. The department wrote subsequently to the committee to confirm that the consultation would take place during a 6-week period from the 3rd of February to the 13th of March. So the purpose of our presentation to you today is to update the committee on that response to the consultation, and committee members will have received a copy of the summary of responses made to the consultation, which gives an overview of the exercise and the views expressed at public meetings and the written responses received. And we intend that this report, combined with the DARD's response to those consultation responses, would be published within coming weeks. We had 9 public meetings. They were facilitated by departmental officials and representatives of the Rural Community Network and the Rural Development Council, and that was they were held during the consultation period. We were very grateful to those 2 organisations for their support. Meetings took place in Banbridge, Garva, Cookstown, Antrim, Enniskillen, Market Hill, Belfast, Omagh and Dungiven, and a number of factors were considered in determining the locations, including trying to get geographical spread, which I'd mentioned the last time I was in front of the committee, rural poor location and venue availability. Public meetings, as I say, were held during the period of the 19th of February to the 6th of March, mixture of morning, afternoon, evening events, and they were publicised in the press and on the department's website, and also promoted in tweets from the executive and a number of stakeholder organisations. And in total, we had 47 people attend the meetings, and they gave their views on the policy proposals for the bill. In addition, the department received 32 written responses to the consultation, and the respondents included a range of rural community stakeholders such as the RCN, the RDC, the Rural Housing Association, the Northern Ireland Rural Women's Network, as well as the Ulster Farmers Union, the Northern Ireland Local Government Association, a number of district councils and several non-departmental public bodies, including the Northern Ireland Housing Executive and Libraries NI. And a list of all the respondents is included in the summary of responses that's already been provided to committee members. I think coming to the substance of the consultation responses, the majority of respondents to the consultation supported the need for change and the proposal to put rural proofing on a statutory footing, and no respondents opposed this proposed enhancement of the rural proofing process, although one respondent was of the view that the case for change had not been adequately made. Most respondents felt that placing a statutory duty to rural proof on all government departments and local councils would help to ensure that policymakers considered the needs of rural dwellers. And they also felt that a statutory duty would help ensure a consistent approach to the rural proofing process. Just to give you a little bit of a flavour in the introductory remarks, only 2 of the 32 respondents considered that the proposed statutory duty would be ineffective. One of these suggested that a duty to consider the needs of rural dwellers without having to mitigate any adverse impacts of the policy being developed or reviewed would not ensure the robust application of rural proofing. And the other respondent considered that the proposed statutory duty should not be introduced prior to undertaking a process of education and of encouragement to rural proof. The majority of respondents also felt that the statutory duty to rural proof should be extended to non-departmental public bodies, although there were differing views on that as to the particular NDPPs to which the duty should in fact extend. And there was strong support for DARD having a statutory role to promote and encourage rural proofing, with some respondents making suggestions as to what this role should involve. And it was thought that this role for DARD would be a further measure that would help ensure a more consistent approach to the rural proofing process. No respondents disagreed with this proposed statutory duty for DARD, although a couple did indicate that they were unsure about it. And one of those respondents, while recognising the need for a lead coordinating body to promote and encourage other bodies to undertake rural proofing, didn't believe that this role should be fulfilled by DARD necessarily. And the other respondent questioned whether there might be an alternative means of promoting and encouraging the need for rural proofing. Most respondents felt that placing a statutory duty on DARD to produce and publish regular reports on rural proofing to be laid before the Assembly would indeed help improve the availability and transparency of information, and a small number of those were not in support of the proposals for monitoring and reporting, 3 of whom felt there was a need for independence in the arrangements, and the other didn't agree with the proposal to lay monitoring reports before the Assembly. But as I say, most respondents felt that that was a good idea. Looking to the proposal to increase cooperation and collaboration between DARD and other departments and public bodies, that was supported by each of the respondents that addressed this particular aspect of the consultation. Many certainly felt that greater coordination and collaboration was indeed vital in order to ensure meaningful and effective rural proofing to really achieve proper outcomes for rural dwellers. And there was indeed widespread agreement amongst respondents to the proposal to strengthen DARD's role in providing support for rural proofing. It was felt that support through the provision of training, advice and guidance was a further key factor in ensuring effective rural proofing, and no respondents disagreed with this proposed strengthening of DARD's role. A more detailed analysis clearly of the comments and the views expressed in response to the consultation, both by those who attended the meetings and indeed by those who wrote in to us, is included in the summary of responses provided to members. And as I mentioned earlier on, it's intended that this analysis, along with DARD's response to the consultation, will be finalised and published over coming weeks. So following DARD's consideration of the responses to the consultation, there are no proposed changes to the policy proposals for the bill. and it is therefore proposed that, subject to executive agreement, that the bill should provide for 6 key areas: a statutory duty on government departments and district council to consider the needs of people living in rural areas when developing new policies, strategies and plans, or revising existing ones, and when designing and delivering public services or making changes to the way in which they're delivered. A statutory role for DAR to promote and encourage government departments and district councils to consider the needs of people living in rural areas. Thirdly, a requirement for DAR to produce regular monitoring reports to be laid before the Assembly. Provision for government departments and district councils to make arrangements for cooperation and collaboration to ensure a more consistent and cohesive approach to addressing the needs of rural dwellers. Fifthly, power for DAR to support rural proofing and the implementation of the bill through the provision of training, advice and guidance. And finally, an option to extend the provisions of the bill to NDPBs. And in advance of securing executive agreement, the Department has been liaising with the Office of the Legislative Council, the Departmental Solicitor's Office and the Legislative Programme Secretariat in relation to preparing a draft bill for the Executive's approval prior to its introduction to the Assembly before the summer recess. So, Mr Chairman, a whistle-stop tour through the overarching feedback through the public consultation process. We respect fully, of course, that the committee will have a key role in scrutinising the proposed bill and its draft provisions, and we very much look forward to working with the committee as it undertakes that role during the bill's passage, and I hope that that is effective enough in concluding those opening remarks for you to the committee members, and we're now very happy to take questions on the substance in any detail.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was initially anticipated that the results of the consultation on the draft proposals for the bill would go to the Executive for approval on the 14th of May.
Yes.
This would allow time for the bill to be introduced to the Assembly before the summer recess. I understand that the Executive did not approve the bill on the 14th of May.
Right.
How does this affect your timescale?
Well, I'll pass just because I know I have my schedule in front of me, but I know that Astrid will have that detail imprinted on her mind. We do have a couple of other executive meetings, and we clearly before the summertime, before recess. So we're very hopeful that it will go to the next one. But Astrid might be able to comment more fully.
Yes, so as Louise said, there's 2 more executive meetings that would allow for executive approval of a bill to be introduced before summer recess. So the final date for secured executive agreement is the 11th of June meeting, and that's for the introduction of a bill. So that is really the sort of deadline for the process. So we are continuing to work in the meantime, as Louise said, with the Office of the Legislative Council in respect of the drafting of the bill. We hope to secure executive agreement to that stage.
Okay. So you have a few weeks.
We have.
11th of June will not be long.
We do appreciate, Mr Chairman, time is reasonably tight, but yes, we have time.
Okay. It is proposed that the bill will extend to local government, yet the response from local government to the consultation was very low. What does this low response mean? Like, I mean, in regard to, being sure of the opinion and feelings of local government, it's strange that the response was so low from them.
Well, of course, I think because we had invited response also in the stakeholder forum that we had representation on that, and Astrid will keep me right as to the precise format of that representation. We certainly had cast our net more widely, and in getting out and about across Northern Ireland, we were keen to ensure that respondents were given every opportunity. I didn't read anything untoward into the fact that there was a low response. The critical thing was for us, the majority of those who did respond were favourably disposed towards what we were proposing, and I think that really was the key thing for us. Perhaps Colette might like to add to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think certainly out of the responses we did get, we got responses from 5 of the councils and from NILGA as well. So, of the councils who've responded, certainly there were, there was more in actually supporting the extension of local government. with, I think it was 1 just said no to that, but 3 yes, and there was 1 that didn't comment on that particular recommendation. So it's not something that has, certainly in the meetings or any other discussions we've had with the stakeholder representatives, it's not something that is raised great concern. Certainly in talking to any of the council representatives or NILGA, there is a desire to see this sort of fitting in well with community planning, as opposed to a sort of an additional sort of requirement on top of or separate to the community planning, but being part of the holistic sort of community planning approach, and that it could fit quite well in there.
Okay. Joe Byrne.
Thanks, Chairman. Sorry for being out at the start. Can I ask a generic question first of all? You've only got 32 written responses, and there's quite a few, quite small numbers turned up at the public meeting. Is that right?
Sorry, yes, there were 47 attended all the public meetings.
So 47 in total attended the 9 meetings?
Yep.
It's very disappointing that, and I'm worried about the energy going out of the rural proofing bill before it just started.
Well, I think the fact that we had an intensive time in which to conduct a public consultation, we did get a very good response, I think, in terms of our substantive written responses. While clearly we would have loved to have seen more people out attending those public meetings, we appreciate that that time is precious. So I think the issue is, did we get a good overall balance in terms of the responses? And the very important thing for me in shaping the consultation, Mr. Byrne, was the fact that we were keen to afford every opportunity to consultees to go right out to all the counties across Northern Ireland to ensure that we gave people ample opportunity. So, but one cannot legislate for who wants to come along to the meeting. So that's why the written responses are really forming the substantive bulk of respondents.
Well, yes, I appreciate the your interviews. In terms of the statutory duty of people wanting DARD to lead, what is the relationship going to be with the LAGs or the local area partnerships, given that we are devolving more functions to these new amphibious bodies, these new councils?
Sorry, and just in what respect, may I just ask you to expand?
Is it envisaged that there will be a close relationship in DARD as the statutory duty body when a driver are proofing with the new councils?
Well, I think the department, in terms of trying to place a duty on the department, is very much about encouraging, facilitating and promoting. So quite naturally it would be engaging closely with councils and with all related bodies, but that's very much from the point of view of trying to be the rising tide that lifts all boats. And I think there's a real commitment that DARD would wish to exercise in relation to that. But am I detecting, is there an issue around it's the set of relationships that you're driving at in your question, just so that I can answer it fully?
Yeah, well, correct me in reference to widespread agreement, training, advice and guidance.
Yes. Yeah.
And then there was the question about NDPBs, would they have a role or not?
Yeah.
The old story is, where is the resource? At the end of the day, this thing will only work if there's an allocated resource, i.e. money. And are we waiting therefore to have the rural development programme agreed or not? Or is there a complete separation between rural development programme and what we're trying to drive through in a rural perfect
Bill, would you just like to draw out the connection with the RDP? I think that this is, if I may, just before Colette comes in, I think this is about how we do business. I think this is about how, if you're looking at the duty that would be on DARD, quite clearly DARD would have to prioritise resources to undertake all of those functions, and that there would have to be an allocation of resource, human and potentially financial resource towards that to make that happen. But that is simply an extension, I would argue, of what DARD has been doing anyway. But perhaps that might like to draw out the point in relation to RDP.
Yeah, I suppose, well, in their work connected to the RDP, the LAGs will be, they will have that role in delivering the proposed RDP. What the LAGs will produce is their local development strategies. That's what they'll be proposing to deliver under the RDP. Those local development strategies will, it's proposed, be part of the council's community plan then. So there'll be that link through the RDP, I suppose, to the community plan. But in terms of rural proofing, if we're proposing to extend the duty to councils, it's the duty will be on the councils themselves. And what we will be, what we're proposing councils would do is take account of rural needs as they're determining their community plans, as they're reviewing those plans, and as they're deciding where they're going to allocate resources within that community plan. So I suppose the duty itself will be on councils. It will be for councils then to ensure that whatever elements of their community plan are taking account of the requirement. In terms of the burden on councils, yes, as I've said, we're wanting, we're proposing that its structures will exist within the structures they're putting in place for community plans. So we're going to be working with DOE. We've been talking to them already. I know things are still at a fairly early stage in planning, but we're hoping to be able to sort of that the structures for rural proofing will be very much a part of what's being developed for community planning, as opposed to an additional add-on burden for councils.
Well, last Chairman, I'm a wee bit confused. Are we going to ignore the issue of resources, i.e. money, and as a result have a less than effective outcome in terms of statutory duty of DARD and the role of the district councils or these new cantons in relation to local development?
Well, I think rural proofing, the intention of rural proofing should help to make better decisions about how resources are allocated. And I think recognising the current climate, there are constraints on resources, and there'll continue to be constraints on resources. But in looking at the rural needs of communities before those decisions are made, and considering how those needs would be affected by decisions, then it's to ensure that the best decisions are made about the allocation of resources that are there.
Thanks, Chairman.
Okay, Tom Buchanan.
Thank you, Chair. Ian, the concern about the low turnout at the meetings. We may have carried out a consultation and made every effort to do that and have 9 meetings and so forth, and the meetings were very, very poorly attended. And is it the case that we're really missing the voice of the rural people here in this exercise that was carried out? I mean, how were the people in the community groups out in the rural areas, why were they not notified about the public meetings? Were they not intended to be at these public meetings? Was the meetings really only for likes of councils, LAGs, community networks, all that type of stuff? Or was the voice of the rural people in the communities not important or not required at these meetings that were held, these 9 public meetings? Because I know from the meeting in Omagh, because I dropped into it, that's how I know. I know from the meeting in Omagh, the only people that were there were from community networks, maybe from LAGs, from really the umbrella body that's delivered. And when I came out of that meeting, there wasn't that many at it. There was 1 or 2 people said to me, we haven't really got the right people here because we haven't got the voice of the community in the meeting, simply because it appeared they weren't invited to it.
May I initially respond to that, and I would say that absolutely the voice of rural dwellers was what we were after, and whether that was as private citizens or through more organised groups.
I'm sorry, why were they not invited to the meetings?
Well, it was, the meetings were published on the website. They were put out in a press release and also advertised in the Belfast Telegraph, the Irish News and the newsletter, and tweeted from the executive's Twitter account, and several stakeholder organisations also put out the meetings in terms of their own website. So I think we used I would argue that we used all of the regular channels to reach out both to private citizens through public adverts and also on umbrella bodies' websites, and along with those who were kind enough to tweet about it too. So I'm not sure how else you can reach private citizens beyond we took a multimedia approach.
Yeah, I see where the problem is, but you know, I'm only speaking for West Tyrone, speaking for Omagh. We look at Omagh and we look at the number of community groups that are dealt with through Omagh District Council. We look at from Omagh now, but at that time it was Omagh. We look at the number of community groups that are dealt with through Omagh Community Network and different ones like that. Now, if I go and talk to them community groups and say to them, like, did you know about this meeting? Not one of them knew about it. None of those community, I mean, I'm involved in one or two community groups myself, and it wasn't, they didn't know about it. I knew about it through the channels from here, but the community groups weren't made aware of it. And this is actually the point that was raised with me by one of the people when we come out of the meeting. You know, we haven't got the right people here because they don't know about it.
Well, can I just add, and maybe Astrid wants to come in as to, in addition to the sort of the advertising process, who else that we wrote to try and reach out as well, because it wasn't left all just to the idea of tweets and putting things on websites and presses. So maybe you might just run through the other people who we wrote to.
In terms of who we wrote to regarding both the consultation documents and the meetings, we drew the list from the Department's Section 75 consultee list, those listed in OFM DFM's guidance on distribution of departmental publications and consultation documents, and also to the members of our Rural Prison Stakeholder Forum. And to know as well from talking to members of the Stakeholder Forum that they in turn further sent out to their email contact list as well. So that's who the consultation was issued to. Additionally, it's just worth pointing out that it was issued as well to all government departments and local councils, both the 26 pre-April 2015 councils and the 11 post-April 2015 councils. So that sort of gives you a flavour of who we wrote to try to get the word out.
It appears somewhat unfortunate that that wasn't passed on to the local community groups on the ground. I mean, we take, for example, Omagh Community Network. They put out a magazine every month, and they put on it all the details of all the things that's happening, all the meetings that's coming up and all. Yet well, it didn't appear on. You know, so there has been a difficulty here, and that seems to be where why that at all these public meetings, I would contend, that is why that you had a very small turnout. A very small turnout at all the meetings, simply because the people in the real rural areas, in the community groups, didn't know about it. If they didn't know about Omagh, then I'm sure there was other areas they didn't know about. But anyway, that has come and gone. That's my gripe about it.
Okay.
And what I want to ask you, are you satisfied now that you've got the voice, that you've captured the voice of the rural community and the process that you've done?
Well, I think certainly we've got a very important cross-section, and I would point back to the number of written responses that we had, some of which were very substantive indeed in coming through, and which included broad networks, which I would contend, not just sectoral interests, but broad community network organisations, which I would say actually do reflect in the views of their membership, and that spread. I mean, the list of respondees, of course, respondents was in your papers. So I think that the range and quality and the diversity of the response we have has given us a good bit of feedback. I would agree with you that it is disappointing, especially when you're running a number of meetings, not to have a better turnout, not least because we, as officials, were delighted to explain. We want more engagement, and you get a rich a conversation. Having said that, we've got a rich conversation with smaller groups as well. So the issue, I would say, in final analysis is, did we get a balance between the forms of consultation that we sought to do? I'd like to have seen more, but I think we certainly got the written response, and that has given us a good range to go on, and certainly given confidence to the proposals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay, Sidney Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, ladies, for your presentation today. And certainly, can I maybe come on the back of what my colleague here has said? I'm looking through here. How many of the district councils actually responded here?
I think we had 5.
5. So we had 5 out of, is that 5 of the original 26? That's the old council setup, yeah.
We wrote to both.
You know, we're talking here today.
We wrote to both. Is the answer. We wrote out, I think that we're saying that we wrote out under
Well, I see one here, Armagh City, Bonbridge and Craigavon, so
yeah,
obviously that's the new one.
Yeah.
So it probably, but 5.
The timing.
But you know, I would have thought if you had, Astrid, if you had communicated through those councils, that it's disappointing that if the word didn't get out, whoever did feel that to those rural community groups especially, and I deal with a lot of them myself, that these people didn't know of these 9 public meetings taking place. And like when we look at 47 attendees right across Northern Ireland for public meetings, like I would have to say it's a poor show. Like anyone looking at this, and it does make me sort of apprehensive in the sense that we're trying to bring something through here, we're trying to get something completed in this mandate, and the Chair's already mentioned about the last meeting in May, it didn't get to the executive. Are we rushing something through here without maybe, as my colleague Tom here said, that we haven't got the voice of the rural people and the needs of the rural people? We as public representatives know a lot of the issues, but you know, there's so much out there. I would be concerned that we haven't really touched base with a lot of those people, and we need to get those views and to rush something through. Would you agree or disagree that it wouldn't be a good idea to rush something through if we hadn't got the views that we want?
Well, I think it's all it goes to the heart of, I think, my earlier response to Mr. Hannon, which is that you can offer the meetings, you can try and reach out, you can do it in the variety of ways that we did through network organisations, by writing directly to councils, by reaching out to NDPBs, by putting your public advertisements in. Clearly, it may have been of lesser interest than some of the meetings that START has done on other big subjects. You know, when we take issues out to the farming community, and we say we're doing specialist seminars or engagements on single farm payment or something like that, where there's they're standing room only. I would certainly have liked to have seen that, but I appreciate that perhaps for some people this might have seemed a wee bit conceptual, improving developing policies to improve the well-being of rural dwellers. I think I go back to my original answer, which is that we got a good spread, and particularly in terms of the range and quality of responses that we've got from the written responses. I think that is a very sensible and reasonable basis on which to draw evidence going forward. And I have to say they were substantive in many cases.
Like Louise, in one meeting here we had 1 attendee. 1. Another one we had 2. Another one we had 4. Another 2 had 4 at each meeting. Like, quite honestly, like, I think any of us could nearly get those numbers if we only went and brought our neighbour. You know what I mean? Like, it's really sad that that's all we got. And something has went wrong here, that those are the numbers that came out to those meetings, and it does concern me that the views of the people are not on board here. We don't know what their views are because they weren't at those meetings. And you know, when I go around my constituency, I hear a lot about the rural areas. I hear it each and every day, like we're all sitting here. So how are you to get those views from numbers like that? And we talk, I think, Carlette, I think it was you was talking about working with the new councils and how to rural-proof community plans and the rural needs going forward. How much work has been done with the councils thus far? Because, you know, if we can't get the councils to communicate, or if they didn't communicate with their community groups to come to meetings, like how much work is there being done here to get down to the grassroots?
Well, I certainly believe that through the network that we had, that we pursued that very energetically, particularly, and I go back to the stakeholder forum, which we used, which was a cross-section, and again, the identities of those representatives were they, in guiding and advising the work of the department on this, were content with the range of what we were trying to do, with the lists of people we were working through, the range of organisations in terms of reaching out. But I do absolutely acknowledge that we would have welcomed more people to enrich the debate. But I don't think you can see the public meetings as if that was the only thing we had done. I would contend you would be absolutely right that if we had that number, that would not have been representative. However, we had 32 written responses which people come back on.
Recently down in my constituency, we had a big issue on nursery provision, and just through social media, within days we were able to have a public meeting, with some 60 or 70 attending that meeting. So that's what I'm saying. Something has went wrong here, that we did not get those numbers out. But getting away from that, we'll leave that. I think it's been well talked about today. How do we get the new councils on board, and what work do we need to do there to ensure that they get the views of what's needed for the rural dwellers? Because, as I have said before, rural dwellers have been the forgotten people for years, and I'm a rural dweller myself, and I have served in councils. So how do we get the new councils to work to ensure that those needs are met under this new rural proofing bill?
Well, I think I'd like to pass to Claire on that, but we are all agreed that the community planning process is the critical way in which every council is duty bound to develop the plan for how it addresses the need of those living in its council boundaries, and against all of the range of policies and critically services which it delivers. And I mean, I think that is at the heart. This was about it in our relationship with councils. It's about ensuring that councils take on board the rural dimension in exercising their duties and developing their community plan. Perhaps you might like to add.
And just to put the point, I think that Joe Byrne put, resourcing is a problem. We need to get away from this talking a good story here to say that this is what the rural community needs, is what they're lacking. But that is all went in the past. We need to get to the stage where these issues need to be addressed, and as we talk about, where's the resourcing coming from to get this sorted. This
slightly takes me back to the conversation we had at the last committee meeting on this one. In terms of the issue of resources, quite clearly, whether it's a government department or whether it is a local council, it is the development of its own policy and strategy and how that impacts on rural dwellers that we are driving here in terms of increasing awareness of the need to consider the rural dweller at the heart of that. This is why the bill and putting this on a statutory footing has been brought forward. But specifically in relation to councils, did you want to say a word in response to Minister Chandler?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a key part, working with others and providing those who will be affected, who will have a duty on them, helping them to deliver on their duty is a key part of what we're proposing in the bill, because part of, as well as extending a statutory duty to all departments and district councils, be a statutory role for DARD to promote and encourage departments and councils to consider the needs of people living in rural areas. There'll be a bar for DARD to provide training, advice and guidance, and also to make arrangements for cooperation and collaboration to help ensure a consistent approach. So those are sort of duties on DARD. So there will be an important role for us in doing this. You know, if subject to the bill being introduced and coming into place, there will be that duty on us to make sure that this all happens as effectively as we can make it. So it's part of an ongoing relationship we'll be having with other departments, with councils and so on. And we would see that evolving as this whole process of community planning does embed. And I know the councils are at early stages of that, but it's quite timely that the bill is being introduced at this early point as well, so that the rural proofing duty would be there fairly early in the whole sort of setup of the new councils, and so that we can work with them. We've already started to make those links and communication links with councils. NILGA as well are represented in our stakeholder forum, and we're going to be continuing that as we work through this process. Just on the aspect of the 32 responses we did get, they were, I suppose, more the stakeholder organisations who did respond broadly. But we did get, I mean, of the responses we got, they were broadly supportive across the piece. You know, so it's not that there were people, like, you know, a lot of people seeing difficulties with the proposals. So I think that's important as well. Just to.
You said there you're working with NILGA.
Yeah, NILGA represented on the.
Will you be working individually with the councils as well?
Well, we want to work with them to see what's the best way to do this, you know, and I know we're early stages of this, but just what way will it work best for them to work with us? So I think, you know, we haven't set this in stone yet. You know, this is the proposals we're putting forward for the bill at this stage, but as the bill moves through its process, then that's work we'll need to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oliver McMullen.
Just very quickly, the councils at present are doing community plans. And I know one meeting I attended with them, there was quite a lot of the meeting was dealt with rural issues, rural proofing, etc. I believe the public out there are more educated about rural proofing than we give them credit for. And this maybe is part of the reason why meetings they got aren't greatly attended, and I know myself, but they rely heavily on community groups, like the community networks, people like that there to deal with those issues for them, and community groups themselves. We ourselves, we had agricultural meetings, we had 300, 400, 500, 600 people at them, and that was one of the things that came up quite a lot at those meetings was rural proofing. So the public are more educated in rural proofing and really what we are taking out of this report. And that's not any way degrading or demeaning your report. But I do think as we move on with the rural proofing issue, you will see more and more coming out, because some councils, I think, haven't even started their community plans yet. Some are maybe well into them, and some are just starting. I know the one council I went to that we actually rung up and we got council officials to sit down with, and we spent nearly an hour and a half with them. So I know 6 other groups that did connect with the council on the community plan. So I think we move on with this here, we're going to see more and more come out on it. Sometimes meetings like this here held by government departments aren't greatly attended. You know, I went to a few of them in my time where there was nobody at them. You know, we sat from right through. You even I know. You even asked the electoral office to come out and do an exercise of getting people registered or getting them to get their identification. They'll come out as long as you can guarantee them 15 people. So that in a sense tells you that there's no big crowds nowadays. Depends on some TV, what night you have your meeting and everything else. So I think one of the drawbacks in all of this here, if the community plans had been given a starting and finishing date, with the way they're laid on at the minute, you can roll them out the whole year till some date next year, and I think that was a mistake. Thank you.
Okay. Declan McAleer.
Chair, thanks very much for letting me in here. I apologise if any of these questions, the question has been asked before, but and I notice on one of the proposals of the bill is to start duty in government departments, district council to consider the needs of people living in rural areas, and also for DARD to report and monitor this. I suppose the question I want to ask is, what is the sanctions if they don't? What is the sanction for government departments, councils and the other NDPPs that will be affected by this here if they don't consider the needs under the bill?
Well, the bill does not propose sanctions as such, and I think we were upfront about that even back in January that we didn't see that as being necessarily part of it. This is about promoting, encouraging. It is about requiring. By placing rural proofing on a statutory footing for government departments and on council, it is about requiring them to demonstrate and evidence and make transparent how they are considering effectively rural proofing, and that's what the whole monitoring and scrutiny piece comes in through, with the presentation, the collection of the data, and the presentation of that before the Assembly. What I had referred to, I think the last time around, but certainly what I can confirm, Mr. McAleer, is that if, as a citizen, one were to feel that a department or a council has not adequately taken account of one's needs as a rural dweller, the normal course of challenge would be there. So the bit is you write into the department if that's not adequate. If there's any sense of maladministration, then quite clearly the Office of the Ombudsman would be the next port of call. We have confirmed that with the Ombudsman, and then finally, of course, you're in the position of judicial review. So this bill is not proposing methods of sanctions beyond those that we recognise already that are available to citizens as you progress through any area where you feel that there has been I use the phrase as a catch-all, maladministration in terms of I'm just double checking that's the right phrase, in terms of meeting the needs of the individual. Sorry, do you want to add to that?
Add maybe on that the proposal for reporting.
Yep.
And that will be an important part, and it's something certainly in the engagement we have had with stakeholders, that this whole the whole sort of idea of transparency was very important, which is intended through the report that we'll draw together, because we'll be reporting on what organisations, departments and councils have done in terms of rural proofing, and that report on departments being laid before the Assembly does leave that lays that open to public scrutiny. That's also important.
Yeah, well, I think that obviously I support the legislative route, and I think all of our MLAs around the table here will agree that we're looking at things like cost to rural transport, rural daycare provision, banks closing, and we're saying that these decisions haven't been rural proofed. I suppose the fear that I have is that if there isn't some sort of an enforcement or something there, that there's a danger that the legislation could lack teeth. And trying to work out in my mind how exactly would legislation differ from the current mechanism of rural proofing that we already have, whilst supporting the need for legislation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think that I believe that this is why the ministers brought forward these proposals in the first instance, is because, notwithstanding the executive's commitment already to the concept of rural proofing, and that's been set out previously, that actually it's getting it into practice, that is the key thing. And that is why the Minister is bringing forward these proposals and advocating that it does need to be placed on its statutory footing. I think this is about embedding best practice. This is where the duty on DARD to try and support, help, encourage, train, facilitate, all of the range of things that DARD will be clearly seeking to do will be very important. But it is in the spirit of working positively to promote it, rather than having that, as you say, the sort of the watchdog element. The truth is, by bringing, and this is one of the things that I think many of our respondents responded to very favourably, was the issue of openness and transparency. What our government departments, how our local councils taking on board when they are developing policies or reviewing policies or developing services, how are they thinking and striving to meet the need of rural dwellers? How is that being made visible? This is about trying to make that visible so the individual citizen can actually see that more, and in fact ultimately through a report before the Assembly, that the Assembly can scrutinise that in the appropriate way.
And Chair, just conclude, I just want to make a point that whilst obviously I would hope for a larger turnout to the public consultation, I should say, by looking at the list of respondents, these individual groups are representing large bodies of people, so whenever these people would have came to the public consultations, they would have obviously had to carry out their own consultations in advance, which they're articulating the corporate view of these groups. So I think that's important to point that there out, that these represent 32 respondents represent many thousands.
Okay.
Cheers. Thank you, Chair. Thanks.
Joe Byrne.
Chairman, I'm going to come back in on a couple of points. I don't want to pass any judgment yet on the integrity of the bill, but I'm concerned that of the 32 written responses received, 10 referred to DAR's decision that further assessments of the impacts of the rural briefing bill were not required. So obviously there was some concern expressed by some of the groups that you would be taking no further assessment in relation to the bill. There's also a question about a framework to support the bill. That begs the question, is there a need for some sort of rural briefing reference group that could be used as an independent advisory body or commentary body? Like, for example, 25-30 years ago, when the whole rural agenda was being created, Niall Fitzgerald was the pioneer, really, of a rural briefing philosophy. Do we have such people out there at the moment that can make reference to?
I'm going to hand, if I may, to Astrid to comment on that. Certainly, I know that although we've only had 2 meetings of our stakeholder advisory group, I've certainly found those meetings very productive. So there is much to be gained, I think, from having that cross-section of views directly advising the department, and I would certainly want to see that continue. That was always the intention, certainly in steering the bill through its general passage. But if I may pass to Astrid on one of the specifics.
Yeah, just to come in on the issue about the views and conclusions reached by DARD to screen out from further assessment the impact of the rural briefing bill. There was just 2 responses which referred to that. Any other responses that we haven't referred to just haven't commented on it, which is why they haven't been included. In relation to the EQIA, it was Disability Action had raised a query just in relation to the evidence base, and the evidence base for the equality screening was drawn from the census data, census 2011 data. And those were the only issues raised in relation to the screenings.
Am I right in saying, however, only 4 stated they agreed with DARD's conclusion that there should be no further assessment made?
There was only 4 who commented on that specific proposal.
Thanks, John.
Okay. Can I thank you very much for your presentation?
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, members.
We'll move on to agenda item 7, written briefing from DARD on the reconsultation of the seed marketing regulations, Northern Ireland 2015. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at page 77, briefing papers from the department at pages 78 to 126. Can I advise members that the department proposes to issue a consultation on the regulations on the 8th of June 2015, with final responses being sought by the 16th of August. The regulations will consolidate 5 seed marketing regulations into a single instrument and will implement long-standing EU directives on the marketing of wheat, butter, cereal, oil and fibre plants and vegetable seeds. There will also be a few technical amendments, such as introducing a time limit for the right of appeal to a decision. Can I seek questions from members? Okay, members, can I seek agreement that the department returns to the committee with an analysis of the consultation responses? Okay. And item 8, written briefing, Guard SL1, the Brucellosis Control Amendment Order, Northern Ireland 2015. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 128 to 129 and papers from the department at pages 130 to 154? Can I advise members that the department proposes to make the strategy rule in order to remove brucellosis pre-movement testing controls? This is on the basis that we are moving towards achieving officially brucellosis-free status later this year. The removal of pre-movement testing controls applies only to internal cattle movements here. Experts to other member states will continue to necessitate the pre-movement test to be conducted within 30 days of export. The rule is not required to be laid before the Assembly and has no resolution procedures. It is anticipated that it will come into operation in September 2015. I seek members' comments from members. I, as a farmer myself, welcome this. This is good news. It cost farmers a lot of money this last number of years. From 2004, farmers had to bear the cost of pre-movement testing, which is welcome. We welcome the fact that we're moving towards brucellosis-free in Northern Ireland and pre-movement testing will end. Members content that the department moves to the next legislative stage? Okay. Agenda item 9, written briefing, Guard SL1 Animal Byproducts Enforcement Regulations, Northern Ireland 2015. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 156, 157, and papers from the department at pages 158 to 201. Can I advise members that following a review of the animal byproducts regulations, the department undertook a 12-week consultation on new regulations which are proposing to make 6 amendments detailed on page 156 of the meeting pack. The department received 5 responses to the consultation and no objections were raised. Again, can I take comments from members? No comments. Are members content that the legislation moves to the next legislative stage? Okay. Agenda item 10, the Northern Ireland Public Services Ombudsman Bill. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 203 to 204, and the correspondence from the NIPSO Ad Hoc Committee at pages 205 to 206. And advise members that the Ad Hoc Committee has requested any views the committee may have on the forthcoming bill. The bill will combine the offices of the Assembly Ombudsman and for Northern Ireland and the Northern Ireland Commissioner for Complaints into one single new office known as the Northern Ireland Public Services Organisation, NIPSO, as well as the department falling under remit of the bill. 2 arm's-length bodies, AFB and the Livestock and Meat Commission, will also be included. All 3 are currently under the remit of the Assembly Ombudsman, so no major changes are envisaged. Can I seek comments from members again? Again, are members content to note? Okay. Agenda item 11, inquiry into better regulation, TOR and survey. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 208 to 209 and draft survey at pages 210 to 213? Members agreed the terms of reference last week. Members are also agreed to undertake this simple survey, and researchers are here today to present the draft of the survey for approval by the committee. Members should remember that it was agreed that the point of the survey is to provide some depth and colour. It will allow farmers to interact with the committee in a new and different way to the normal stakeholder event. But as we discussed last week, for a wide variety of reasons, it will not be a scientific or statistically sound survey, which as you would get from a proper market research. Can I ask researchers Mark Allen and Barbara Love to brief the committee on the draft survey? Okay, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. And
Barbara.
Can I just introduce Barbara as well, who's with me, I suppose, and Barbara's specialism is in relation to the survey. So if you have questions, probably you can direct them, but I may well hand them over to Barbara at that point. But I suppose the draft survey that has been compiled really in conversation with ourselves and research and with the clerk is included there in pages 210 to 213 in your pack. And I think as the clerk had stressed last week, really in terms of introducing the terms of reference, the real primary purpose of this questionnaire is to try and enable you to really focus in on a particular area that your better regulation inquiry could focus on. So it is, I suppose, at this point, it's quite a broad exercise, with the idea being of trying to funnel the information and bring it down into something more manageable. And I suppose in that regard to more likely to maybe generate an outcome for you. So within that context, you can see there on page 210, the first number of questions really contextual. To, I suppose, really, as you had alluded to there, Chair, in relation to the issue around making sure the sample or the survey is representative. So I suppose being able to ask questions like what age are you a full-time or part-time farmer, what size of a farm and the sector, we should be able to at least ensure that we get representation right across the board. That would be our hope. And I suppose those questions really are designed to try and provide that information. You can see there then they also questions 5 and 6, broadly similar theme on page up to 11. We're trying to build up an idea of how many people work on the farm and the county and the location, as well as see maybe there's particular burdens maybe. I suppose really question 7 on is really the meat of the questionnaire, so to speak. And you can see there, I suppose, that the areas of regulation, farmers are asked to identify the one that they find most burdensome, and that'll be ranked on a 1 to 10 basis, so 10's most burdensome, 10's least. And the actual categories there are actually ones that we took from the DARD Better Regulation report. So those are recognised headings: animal disease control, livestock identification, agri-environment, pesticides, the welfare of animals, trade in animals and animal products, veterinary medicines, the nitrates action programme, the single farm payment or basic payment as it is now, and cross-compliance linked to that, and then pollution prevention and control. So those are the ones that we were suggesting that would effectively form the broad brush. Question 8, I suppose, then is open-ended, but again, we are open to conversation on that one in terms of how maybe to proceed, because it really takes those broad categories and asks the people to effectively say, for the one that you ranked as most burdensome, why is that? What's the particular element of it? So say, for example, it's in relation to disease or animal disease control. Is it some particular element around bovine TB testing? Or is it maybe something like as you had mentioned there, just in one of the previous stat rules in relation to brucellosis? So that takes us on then, I suppose, really just to the last 2 questions. Question 9 being really, again, really supposed looking for suggestions as to how the burden could be reduced for individual farmers in relation to particular areas. And then just finally we asked, which I suppose would be general practice, any other general comments regarding regulation of farming in Northern Ireland. So, as I said, it's a very brief overview. We're quite happy to take questions or even to discuss maybe the content of those. So I'll hand over to yourselves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And, Robert, probably the only problem I see, it's 100%, the only problem I see is getting people to do it. And that's the difficulty with farmers. When it comes to paperwork and getting people to actually take a few minutes and do it, it's part of the problem. I think I'm not sure how do we propose to bring it to their attention.
Okay, sorry, I'll answer that, Mark. But we do realise that it's going to be a problem getting people to it. So we will be relying on the goodwill of some of the stakeholder organisations to make farmers be aware of it. We'll be sending out a Twitter feed. There'll be a wee notice in the paper and a press release. And we'll also be relying on the members around the table here to, any time they see or hear a farmer, to encourage them to fill it in.
What size of a survey would we hope or would like ideally to get?
Again, I think as we discussed this last week, we would hope to get Well, as I have said to the researchers, if I have more than 20 people filling it in, that is better than any stakeholder event we've done. So, but we would be looking hopefully to get about 200. You know, when we probably couldn't handle more than that. Do you want to just maybe fill in the numbers there?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, the more we get, the more sure we can be that the findings we have are representative of farmers' views, and hopefully with the way it's promoted, we'll get as good a response as we can. I think we'll just have to be clear if we get a low response rate, that it's not representative, but at least it gives us a flavour of the kind of issues that farmers are facing. Based on previous experience of doing these kinds of surveys with other committees, you do tend to get a low response rate in comparison to maybe a survey house that's got vast resources and staff that are able to chase up people and get them to fill it in. We don't have those resources, but we will certainly review it as the responses come in to see what sort of a response we're getting, and if we feel we're lacking in any particular area, we can push again with the stakeholders and see if we can get that up, so we can see as we go along what sort of a response we're getting and what we feel about that response.
Okay. Any other questions? No, I think the questions are 100%. I think they cover all the issues, there's no doubt, I think.
On question 8, one thing, members, there that I was just going to suggest, and this is after discussion with the researchers, I don't know whether you think it might be easier for farmers to fill this in if we put in some types of reasons why a regulation would be most burdensome, or would that might be too leading. So I have been talking again to various people about things like, well, this regulation is burdensome because it's costly to implement. You know, I have to pay for a vet to come out, or it takes me 2 hours to fill in a form to do this, or it is irrelevant, I don't see why I'm filling this out, it's a waste of time, or it's a barrier to me, I can't do something in my business unless I've done this. Now, those are just 4 things that I came up with off the top of my head. I don't know whether you think that would be too leading, or whether you have ones that you would like to add to that yourselves. I don't know whether it would be too leading or not. So,
I think the way it is at the moment, it's likely that a farmer will come up with the most immediate concern he has about a burdens of issue, and that will almost automatically spew it.
Come out, right.
I think farmers will find it quite easy to tick the boxes. Whenever you get them to write a response, you know, that's when you run into, you know, more than that, you know, I think.
Well, you might be able to go to something like a hybrid, which would be maybe 5 or 6 specific issues that you could mention, like Stella says, and then a word for a comment at the bottom about the most irksome issue.
Okay.
Could those 4 or 5 or 6, could you list them in order, maybe of rank as well?
I could maybe do. I could maybe say,
you're listing her down that road as well.
We could maybe, rather than leading, we could maybe suggest, for example, and that maybe would give them some idea of what we're looking for there with that.
Well, that could do,
Yeah.
For example,
within the body of the question, then.
Yeah, within the body of the question, and I thought that might be just, you know, because I know ticking boxes. Sorry, Declan.
See, in relation to question 8, might the farmer think that they have to choose from this list?
Yeah, I think that's the idea. We really wanted to try and keep the farmer focused on
not all over the
on DARD regulations, agriculture regulations. Otherwise, probably what you're going to get is income tax returns or something like that, you know, or the VAT return. Which I know from being in a small business myself is a lot more burdensome to fill in than you.
Could probably reword that to say, thinking about the area you ranked as most burdensome in question 7, so that we are talking about this, we're not talking about other things.
And it maybe does, maybe in question 7, maybe need to explicitly state in relation to DARD.
Yeah.
You know, maybe just we need to restate that maybe on the body of the question. I think that's a fair comment.
Thank you.
There's certain regulations that this committee could have no impact over, like tax and stuff like that. So, okay.
Okay. Any other members? 10 enough? Okay. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much.
Move to agenda item 12, forward work programme. Can I refer members to the forward work programme on pages 215 to 219? Can I remind members the breakfast event followed by a formal committee meeting to take place in Cookstown on Thursday the 28th, 2015, which is Thursday week. We need to have definite numbers for this event meeting, both to facilitate catering and expectations of the stakeholders who are attending. The list of those stakeholders that are expected to attend has been tabled. We have our requirement for a quorum of 4 for the meeting, and that would be an absolute minimum, I thought, if we're going to.
Am I up there?
Right, okay. What about Tom?
Yep.
2.
Is that woman?
That's Thursday in Kirkstown, Thursday week.
Yep.
What time is that?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock in the morning,
9 in the morning for breakfast, then.
and then a short meeting afterwards.
Didn't they know?
Apologies for me, I can't make it.
Okay.
Apologies for you, yeah, okay.
Apologies for me at the minute.
You cover for me, Chair.
You're all letting the farmers down.
We're booked solid in our offices.
We all are, but we have to make. No. Yeah.
Declan?
I had meetings last week at after 6 o'clock because it was the show for several people. I had to do it. No option.
We just work it later, will we?
What?
We work it later.
Absolutely. I had no option.
Well, that's 5. If 5 of those people turn up, then we can go ahead with the meeting.
But I think it's important that it's not as bad as going to a meeting. And 2 people there, or 3 people or more.
Is it in Lochray or where is it?
No, it's in the rural
development.
Yeah. So, yeah, we sent out an email with all the details.
And we're getting an update on Tipsy or something?
Yes. Yeah, that's what it is, yeah.
Right, okay, does members want to be reminded of this again? Are you sure that everyone take a note of that, or you remind them again?
The 5 members that are going will get a wee pack anyway.
Email out again in case anything changes.
Get you home before 6, go and want late meetings again.
No. Especially somebody's can't make them late week. I advise members that there are a number of new visit requests to consider as follows. Page 220, there's a request from Dundee to visit a pig innovation centre beside Belfast International Airport. A table paper. We have table paper. Alright. There, is it on this? Oh, sorry. Okay. There is, I suppose, to make it very clear at the start, if we're going to do the tour, they're expecting everyone to take a shower first.
Mustn't think we're clean, Chairman.
So that may be a step too far, but that is the requirement if we're to go in and see this unit begin. So the biosecurity is
Biosecurity, you've had no contact with any other pig for 48 hours, and you'll be required to shower on the premises before you are in.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm bowing out at that stage.
Get dip in the top.
Because it's like
You have to decide if you want to go and if you want to go when you want to go.
Or that's enough to put you off.
That's the only female in the committee, apart from Stella and the lead.
And I'm bowing out.
The other option is that you can look for your viewing gallery to look and.
There's a viewing gallery. I just don't know how much you'd see at the if you go up to a viewing gallery. You'd see everything that they want you to see. So I'm just not sure how much you would see.
Sure.
Well, you want to be sure that what do you think?
No, it's just what about protective clothing and supplied by themselves? Sure, them overalls and stuff.
I've asked. There's a requirement to shower. Yeah.
A requirement to shower.
I think it's what fast.
So.
Chairman, it begs the question: what benefit would we get if we were able to comply with all that?
No, I agree. Yeah. No, I
more to be cleaned.
I agree. I think it would be.
We should all support Stella here.
We put that up to a later stage.
Yes.
All right, Stella.
We're going to put your bio or the be off in.
Yeah, you happy to put it up for the time being? Or do you just want to shower? Okay, that's that one. Okay. We have we have 2 other requests for visits, or 2 or 3 more. So I mean, I think some of these may we've one from at page 221 is a request from NIFPO to visit Kilkeel Harbour. Members, last visit Kilkeel Harbour in October 2012, maybe more. I had said this to Stella before looking at this, but I think it might be after the recess, coming into the autumn, would be a better time to visit Kilkeel Harbour. Again, I'm in your hands, members, on Kilkeel. I was thought
We've been at Kilkeel Harbour before.
in 2012, yeah, 3 years ago. But if we were going to visit it coming into the autumn time, it's more appropriate in relation to
Fisheries.
fisheries bill and all the rest, you know. So is that okay?
And maybe it'd be more appropriate at that stage to go to one of the ports that you haven't seen.
Port of Ferry or Port of Galway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, these ones have requested, you understand? There's also a tabled invitation from Appy Lachall, close to my heart, to visit their premise. They've suggested a 2-hour visit in order to see the 5 main working areas. In addition to the 4 potential visits, we've outlined the visit to Brussels just now. When do you want to take this first? Yeah, the one, Appy Lachall, they'd be keen first to do. Prices on them at the minute in relation to... Yeah, they do. They have grass seed, potatoes, apples and mushrooms. At least 4 at least, isn't that right?
Potato and biomass.
Yeah. There is pressure on Appy at the moment. And research and development funding has been cut drastically, so I think it'd be good to visit them. Especially if we've left out the other 3 at the moment. Possibly before recess if we
When are you proposing, Chairman? Or when is the start proposing?
It'll be up to yourselves.
Up to yourselves. But again, we need a...
I mean,
Lachall's fairly
a
centred.
A Wednesday or Thursday.
Very historical visit as well, Chairman.
A long travel for you, Chair.
Need a book early.
I can watch the travel.
It depends when you want to go. I mean, it used to be that we had a Thursday afternoon. There was no member in this committee on any other committee on a Thursday afternoon, and that always was the best time to go. But now we have 2 members sitting on the Justice Committee who meet on a Thursday afternoon.
POE? Well, morning.
Thursday morning is, yeah. And I know it's out the other way. So it's a, Wednesday morning, if there's 5 members sitting on other committees. Wednesday afternoon, there's 2 members sitting on other committees. Thursday morning and Thursday afternoon, there's 2 members each morning and afternoon. So you're either going to clash with somebody, or you choose to go on a Friday, which I know is a constituency day. So.
Well, that, we've ruled out the rest at the moment for the time being. So
you want to keep to your Thursday afternoon, which is what you.
Who's the 2 members that leaves?
The 2 members that are on the Justice Committee are Edwin Poots and Tom Elliott. Obviously, we don't know what will be happening with that issue. So.
Right. Other members that would possibly go to that. Need to know.
I'm going.
And Lachall. Yeah. No well in advance of Thursday.
Yeah.
Be sometime in June.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a particular Thursday in June that you would like to go?
Might be able to make that this.
You might. I'll be able to do that. Right.
You could show me the signpost.
Bring the direction. That's okay. I think there's 5 or maybe.
I'll look at them either the second last Thursday in June, whatever that is.
But okay.
Grand. Russell's just then.
In addition to the 4 potential visits that was outlined, visit to Brussels has also been decided on. The clerk will to provide an update on this, but the only viable date before summer recess is Wednesday 17th and Thursday 18th of June, and I do think maybe it's going to be difficult to meet the people we need to meet, so it may not be an option. There's no point in going for the sake of going, in my eyes. But you want the clerk to bring you through? Yes.
If we can't see Commissioner Hogan and you wanted to see the 3 MEPs, so far we've only had a response back from 1 MEP, was Mr Nicholson, and that obviously might be a different situation now. But the only time that he was available was Wednesday morning, the morning of Wednesday the 17th. We hadn't heard back from the other MEPs as of this afternoon. So it may be better to give them more time to respond, because their diaries are always fully booked. we're looking to get a meeting in 3 weeks. That's just not possible, I think, with them.
I think we should look at the autumn, I
Defer till the
think.
autumn as well.
And see, you know, if, there's no point in going just for the sake of going, I think.
Autumn.
Okay, everybody happy with
And
that?
just remember that you already have 3 visits scheduled for September, October. We haven't agreed when. You've already agreed that you want to go to London to meet the grocery code adjudicator.
The autumn too?
In the autumn, and maybe the DEFRA secretary and people like that. You've already agreed to go to Dublin to meet with the Doyle Committee. That's already been agreed, and that date has been agreed with the Doyle Committee previously. And you've already agreed to visit Queen's to go to the Global Food Security. So that's 3 visits probably between September and October to make it comfortable for you, so that you're not, you know, doing everything once a week type of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And then obviously Brussels, we maybe will do that after October or something. And Kilkeel is going to be, so there's 4 visits in
the
there.
mix. Louis,
You know.
push it in front of us.
So you just keep pushing it.
Chairman's taking it.
It's like the bills, you keep pushing it.
So it's just to be aware of that if you're thinking of other visits. You've got Brussels, Kilkeel, London, Dublin and Queen's. So 5 visits in the autumn term.
Okay, members.
And you're going to be busy because there's going to be a lot of bills coming, so if we're all here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Over here. The right member, the following additional 11 sessions have now been confirmed. Start briefing on workforce restructuring on the 26th of May, which is next Tuesday. Same day we have a DART briefing on the Kettle ID. Okay, and ministerial briefing is on 23rd of June on the 2/15/16 targets. So that's okay, additional briefings that are covered. And that covers the forward work programme agenda. Okay. Agenda item 13, any other business? Any other business? Other business. Agenda item 14, date and time for the next meeting. Next meeting of the Committee for Agriculture and Rural Development will take place on Tuesday, 26th of May 2015 at 1:30 p.m. in Room 30, Parliament Buildings. I declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room.